Greetings in our 100 Best Chess Games ranking. Today we present to you the chess game that ranked 96th in our list, titled Chucking the Queen. One of the most beautiful games, executed by the brilliant Vasyl Ivanchuk. In this encounter, his opponent was Alexey Shirov, who played as black. Ivanchuk employs a novelty in the Slav defense, and then sacrifices the queen. The chess tournament Hugovensvik an Steel in 1996 was the 58th edition of the Hugovensvik an chess tournament. It took place in Vik an in January 1996 and was won by Vasyl Ivanchuk. Pawn to d4. Ivanchuk opens the game with the queen's pawn. Black responds pawn to d5. Pawn to c4. Shirov responds pawn to c6. A classic move, mentioned by Italian authors Polerio and Salvio in the late 16th to early 17th century. Unlike the queen's gambit, black strengthens the center without blocking the path for the queen's bishop. However, the knight on b8 loses a good square. The Slav defense unfolds on the board. Knight to c3. Knight to f6, knight to f3. Both sides develop their knights alternately. Pawn to e6. Shirov strengthens the center. Bishop to g5. Ivanchuk pins the knight. Pawn captures on c4. Black opts for the line developed by Botvinnik, leading to sharp and forcing play. The idea of this move lies in the subsequent move to b5, winning a pawn. But Ivanchuk is undeterred. He plays e4, intending to capture the pawn on c4 or utilize the diagonal by playing e5. Pawn to b5. Shirov defends the pawn. Pawn to e5. White attacks the knight, creating an impression that Ivanchuk is winning a piece. Pawn to h6. But Shirov finds a counterplay. A counterattack on the bishop. Bishop retreats to h4. Pawn to g5. Black continues to press the bishop. Knight captures on g5. White sacrifices the knight to later regain it. Pawn captures g5. Bishop captures g5. The black knight is once again pinned. Knight to d7. Shirov reinforces his knight. Pawn captures knight on f6. Ivanchuk regains the piece, and as a result of a minor opening skirmish, White has an extra pawn for now. But the position is so irrational that the number of pawns on the board is currently of little interest to anyone. Bishop to b7. Shirov places the bishop on a major diagonal, preparing to undermine the center with the advancement of c5. Pawn to g3. Ivanchuk plans to counterbalance this bishop. Pawn to c5. Black attacks the rook. White responds with d5. Black plays queen to b6. Firstly, protecting the pawn on e6 in case of capture, and secondly, preparing for queenside castling with pressure along the d-file. Bishop to g2. Black castles kingside. White also castles, securing the king. Pawn to b4. Shirov attacks the knight. Although the third world champion, Jose Raul Capablanca, said not to move pawns away from your king as it weakens its position, if these pawns are about to turn into queens, why not take the risk? It's worth noting that in the Botvinnik variation, general considerations usually take a back seat, and specific features of the position and calculation of variations come to the forefront. Knight to a4. In this position, Ivanchuk attacks the queen. Queen to b5. Pawn to a3. White maintains the initiative, but black's defensive resources are significant enough. Ivanchuk hopes to weaken the black king by opening one of the files on the queen side. Shirov captures the pawn on d5. White recaptures the pawn on b4. Black accepts the exchange. Pawn captures on b4. Bishop to e3. Firstly, attacking the pawn on a7, and secondly, with the idea of transferring the bishop to d4 if needed, blocking the opponent's central pawn majority. But here, capturing the pawn on f6 is not good due to the double attack. Threatening the knight and the queen is approaching the black king. Shirov plays knight to c5, offering a knight exchange. Queen to g4. Check. White delivers. Check. Rook to d7. Black shields from the check. Queen to g7. Incredible move. This move is so spectacular and unique that it's easy to understand why the term Chucky's Planet was coined. One of the most brilliant moves in modern chess practice. Ivanchuk sacrifices the queen, attacking the rook and the bishop. Bishop captures on g7. There's no choice. The sacrifice must be accepted. Pawn captures on g7, attacking the rook. Rook retreats to g8. Knight captures knight on c5. Sacrificing the queen for two minor pieces doesn't lead to a quick victory, but it gives white a prolonged initiative in this position. The move rook to c7 deserved attention, squeezing the knight, and after a rough exchange on b7, an extremely complicated position with mutual chances arises. In this version, Alexey Shirov attempts to reduce the level of struggle with exchanges. In another line, he pushes the central pawn to d4, which turns out to be an unsuccessful decision. Yes, black attacks the knight and the bishop, but white captures the black bishop on b7. Black responds by capturing the rook on b7. Ivanchuk takes the knight on b7. Now it turns out that taking the bishop is impossible because of the knight fork, resulting in the loss of the strongest piece. If black captures with the queen on b7, then white takes the central pawn, defending the passed pawn on g7, closing in on the pawn on a7, and strangely developing an attack on the black king. Queen to b6. Black attempts to defend the central pawn with the queen. Bishop takes on d4, another stunning move. Taking the knight on b7 is bad due to the rook's attack on a7, forcing black to capture the bishop. Queen takes on d4. White attacks the queen. Rook to d1. Now what to do becomes a question for black. The best move seems to be capturing on g7. Although the engine promises white an advantage, the position remains extremely complex, and either side could win. Instead, in this game, Alexey Shirov captured the pawn on b2. Black aims to utilize the strength of the passed pawns, but it doesn't work out for them. Ivanchuk gives a check. Black retreats the king to b8, rook to b1. White attacks the queen, as well as the pawns on b4 and c4. Defending both pawns is impossible because white can execute a beautiful combination, rook to a7, and if black captures the knight, there's a fork winning the queen. Of course, black is not obliged to capture and cannot break the pin on g7. But then, white gives a check, capturing the pawn on b4, advancing a decisive attack on the black king. If an attempt is made to defend the pawn on b4 with queen to d2, then white captures on c4, followed by rook to a4, attacking the knight. Capturing the knight is not possible due to the loss of the queen to the pawn's move to a5, and again white captures on b4, initiating a powerful attack on the exposed black king. Queen takes on g7, the continuation chosen by Shirov, also doesn't solve the issue. Ivanchuk breaks through with the rook to b4, check, king to c7. Rook to a6. Ivanchuk defends the knight, threatening to infiltrate on the 7th rank with subsequent rook to a7, delivering a linear checkmate. Rook to b8. Shirov manages to find an escape from checkmate, but at the cost of significant material losses. Ivanchuk captures on a7, check. The king takes on d6, black has to capture, losing the rook. Rook takes rook on b8, the pawn doesn't move. In case of the move c3, white simply doubles up on the c-file and captures the pawn. Queen to g4, Shirov attempts to find some perpetual check. Rook to d8, white checkmates the king. The king retreats to c6. The game continues with rook to a1, covering the first rank. In this position, black resigns as gradually white will sacrifice 2 rooks for a pawn and a queen, obtaining connected passed pawns on the king side and an absolutely winning pawn endgame. White rooks prove stronger than the black queen, and the loss of the pawn is inevitable. So, on move 35, Alexey Shirov resigned. With the conclusion of this captivating game, it becomes clear: chucking the queen is not just a title, but a symbol of brilliant strategy and bravery. In every move, Vasyl Ivanchuk demonstrated not only outstanding mastery but also unique intuition, sacrificing the queen to achieve victory. As Ivanchuk himself says, such creative insights create a good mood for the game. Things get going. The hand, so to speak, becomes more confident in striking. As a result of this brilliant game, Ivanchuk not only won this match but also the entire tournament, confirming his superiority and creative approach to the chessboard. Let's admire this great example of mastery and strive for similar heights in our game. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to updates on this channel, hit the bell icon, and don't forget to leave your comments. And most importantly, remember that chess is not just a game, it is art. Let's study the masterpieces of this art together.